Spirit warriors, you've probably noticed it already. The way people fidget when you walk into a room, the sudden hush in conversations, or how stories get rewritten the moment your presence is felt. This isn't paranoia, and it's definitely not coincidence, it's recognition. You're not just a name on someone's contact list, you're an enigma that's got people talking in whispers, and they're not saying, "Who's that?" They're saying, "Watch out, that one's too sharp to fool." The world is slowly realizing that you, a chosen one, carry more than intuition. You carry divine intelligence. And when intelligence meets spiritual discernment, the result is a person who cannot be manipulated, deceived, or broken. Take Joy, for example. A real chosen one I know. She never shouted for attention or demanded respect, but her very presence shifted the atmosphere. People tried to test her boundaries, but she knew the game before they even made their move. She didn't retaliate, she didn't gossip back. She simply let the truth speak, and oh, how loud it was. That's the secret of the chosen ones. They don't clap back, they outgrow, they don't destroy, they expose. And it terrifies people. You see, science has already confirmed that humans are wired to pick up on subtle energy. It's called the brain's unconscious ability to detect safety or danger in others without a word being said. So when your spirit enters the room, people it before they even understand it. That's why your name shows up in rooms you've never entered, because your energy entered first. That's why the lies unravel when you're present, because your frequency is truth. And that's why the whispers about you have shifted from mockery to awe, because your quiet confidence, your ability to see through masks, and your refusal to conform make you unforgettable. Psychological studies have shown that individuals with high emotional and spiritual intelligence often unsettle those who live behind facades. Why? Because truth agitates illusion, and the chosen one's presence is pure, undiluted truth. So yes, they're watching you, not to tear you down, but to figure you out. They want to know how you stay calm when the storm is loud. How do you keep your peace when chaos is trending? How you know things before they're spoken. And the answer isn't in a book or a strategy. It's divine, it's spiritual. It's the kind of knowing that can't be taught, only bestowed. Chosen one, you're not crazy for sensing things. You're not arrogant for speaking boldly. You're not cold for protecting your energy. And that awareness is what makes you powerful. So walk boldly. Let them study. Let them whisper. Just know this. You're not walking alone. You're walking with divine intelligence, and that makes you unstoppable. Point one, you read between the lines, even when there are none. People often assume that intelligence is confined to books, degrees, or the ability to articulate thoughts with fancy vocabulary. But true intelligence, the kind that unnerves a room, silences deception, and shifts entire atmospheres, is spiritual. It's not just about IQ, it's about intuitive quotient. And you, spirit warrior, have that in divine abundance. You see, your intelligence isn't just cognitive, it's divine discernment. While others rely on what's visible, you perceive what's invisible. You hear the space between words, you read between the lines and beyond the lines. You don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your soul. And that's not something you can teach in a classroom. That's gifted insight from the Most High. It's the kind of knowing that comes from walking through fire and coming out gold. The kind of knowing you can't fake, can't fabricate, and can't copy-paste. It's earned through spiritual battle and granted through divine favor. Psychologically, what you're tapping into is known as interpersonal intelligence, the ability to read others' emotions, energies, and intentions. But in your case, it goes deeper. What you have is spiritual intuition. Your spirit doesn't need proof. It picks up energy, frequency, truth, and deception in real time. This is why people get uncomfortable around you. You might not say anything, but your presence is loud. They know. You don't need receipts. You can feel when something's off. You can walk into a room and immediately sense tension, deceit, or brokenness, even if everyone's wearing a smile. And here's the part that makes them whisper. You don't flaunt it. You don't walk around claiming to be psychic. You just know, and when you call things out before they happen, or simply act with confidence based on what your spirit has shown you, it intimidates people who operate in manipulation, pretense, or ego. They start asking, how did you know that? Or why does it always seem like they're one step ahead? They don't realize you're not playing their game at all. You're receiving divine downloads while they're still buffering. Now let's talk about how your brain works. Neurologically, intuitive people often have a highly developed insula, a region of the brain that processes emotions, bodily awareness, and empathy. But here's where spirit warriors differ. Your spiritual senses are just as sharp. In the Bible, this is referred to as the gift of discernment, the divine ability to distinguish between spirits, truth and lie, pure and corrupt, light and darkness. And you don't just sense people, you see them. Not with your eyes, but with your spirit. That's why they gossip. That's why the rumors swirl. Because people can't explain how you just get it. How you always know who to trust, who to avoid, when to move, and when to stay still. They're used to people being fooled by facades, charmed by charisma, and distracted by distractions, but not you. You look at someone's soul, not their smile, and that terrifies those who thrive in performance. Here's the unique thing about you, spirit warrior. Your mind isn't clouded by ego, insecurity, or the need to prove anything. Your mind is clear, sharpened by trials, illuminated by purpose, anchored in spirit, and that clarity, it slices through the fog of deceit like a sword. You don't have to argue with lies. Your presence alone exposes them. That's why they avoid eye contact. That's why they distance themselves, not because you harm them, but because your truth challenges the identity they built on illusion. Spiritually, you're operating at a higher frequency. Science calls it coherence. When your heart, brain, and nervous system are in alignment, your energy field becomes strong and harmonious. But we call it anointing. And that's something no hater, no demon, and no jealous whisper can touch. When you're tapped into divine guidance, you're led by peace, not pressure. You don't chase vibes, you carry presence. So yes, spirit warrior, people talk, they gossip, speculate, and whisper. But the truth is, they're just trying to decode the frequency you're tuned into, a frequency that exposes lies without saying a word, a frequency that comes from above. You were never meant to blend in. You were built to pierce through the fog, not float in it. Your mind is a weapon, not a sponge. And your spirit? It's a radar for truth. Let them talk. You're not here to explain the divine, you're here to embody it. Keep walking in truth and watch the lies scatter like shadows at sunrise. Point 2, you play the fool to fool the fool who thinks you're a fool. Now that's a mouthful, spirit warrior, but let's dive into this truth with the precision of a blade and the patience of a storm. You let them think you were naive. You let them misread your silence, misinterpret your calm, and mistake your stillness for stupidity. Why? Because you've mastered one of the rarest arts in this world, the power of divine restraint. You know that revealing your cards too soon is like handing your sword to the enemy and asking them to be gentle. You're not here for performative intelligence or empty validation. You're here to watch, calculate, and wait with spiritual precision. See, the truth is, spirit warriors move in layers. You walk among people who misjudge you by design. They see a quiet one and assume you're clueless. They see your smile and think you're soft. But what they don't realize is, behind that gentle demeanor lies a warrior's code, sharpened by experience, guided by something higher. You don't argue because your life is the argument. You don't defend yourself because time will. And by the time they figure out they were being watched by someone light years ahead, in the spirit, karma is already circling the block in a black cloak, ready to collect on every lie they spoke in your name. Psychologically, this is a tactic rooted in what some call strategic underestimation. In military and political strategy, it's a maneuver where you allow your opponent to believe they have the upper hand. Why? Because when people believe you're not a threat, they lower their defenses. They expose their tactics. They talk too much. They underestimate you. And that, spirit warrior, is when the real power move begins. Not through retaliation, but through revelation. You've always known more than you let on. You didn't need to shout it from the mountaintops, you simply became the mountain. Now let's talk about the gossip. Oh, they're talking, loud, constant, obsessed. And here's the kicker. They're not gossiping because you failed them. They're gossiping because you embarrassed them without even trying. You stayed calm while they spiraled. You kept building while they tried to break you. You remained poised while they exposed their own insecurities. And nothing threatens a person who builds illusions more than someone who lives in truth. They expected a reaction. What they got was silence. What they wanted was chaos. What they received was peace. And peace, spirit warrior, is the ultimate power flex. That's why your calm scares them, because calm is control, calm is clarity. Calm is someone who knows and doesn't need to prove it. And let's be real, people aren't used to that. In a world addicted to noise, your stillness is disruptive. Your refusal to play the game by their rules makes you a mystery they can't solve. And when people can't understand you, they either villainize you or try to diminish you. It's not personal. It's spiritual warfare, but the beauty is you're not even fighting. You're just evolving. You don't flex, you observe, you don't react, you strategize, and you sure as heaven don't chase. You align. Your moves are spirit-led, not ego-fed. That's what makes you untouchable. You see through deception, feel the shift in energy before words are spoken, and sense the truth in silence. You are what they never expected. A soul that's both wise and wild, humble and holy and quiet, but not to be mistaken for weak. So the next time the gossip gets louder, smile. It means your light's burning brighter. It means the masks around you are slipping. It means your spirit is making waves in places that relied on illusions for control. Stay in your truth, spirit warrior. Keep moving in silence. Keep being 3 steps ahead. Because while they talk, you walk right into destiny. Point 3, you're spiritually intelligent, a walking lie detector. Spirit warriors, gather close, because what you carry isn't ordinary, it's sacred. The spirit of truth doesn't just live in you, it radiates through you like an unfiltered beam of divine awareness. And with that light comes a sensitivity to deception most people can't even comprehend. You don't just hear people's words, you discern their spirit. While others are caught up in surface-level chatter, you're reading the temperature of a soul. Imagine walking into a room and immediately knowing who's genuinely happy to see you and who's hoping you fall behind that forced grin. That's not paranoia, that's discernment. That's your spirit reading what eyes won't show and mouths won't say. You don't need evidence to feel that something's off. Your spirit testifies before any facts surface. You can detect a shift in energy, the hesitation in someone's compliment, and the micro-behavior that says, I'm threatened by you. That level of perception, it's a gift and a weight. You sense when conversations are weaponized. You feel the chill when someone wraps their criticism in fake kindness. You recognize when someone loves the idea of you, but not the real you. That's what makes you a spirit warrior. You were born with radar built into your soul. It's divine, not delusional. Spiritually speaking, what you're walking in is what ancient traditions have called the gift of discernment. And it's referenced in texts from the Bible to mystic literature around the globe. Discernment is the ability to judge well, to distinguish truth from falsehood. It's spiritual intuition refined by truth itself. While most people rely on logic or what's visible, you tap into a higher frequency. You feel when someone's energy doesn't match their words. You sense when something is spiritually toxic before it even unfolds. Now let's talk about the cost, because not everyone will clap for your clarity. People who dwell in deception, who live in illusions, manipulation, and half-truths, are deeply disturbed by your presence, not because you've attacked them, but because your existence shines a spotlight on what they've tried to keep hidden. You don't have to say a word. Just standing in your truth exposes their performance. Just walking in authenticity reveals their pretenses. It's like your presence demands accountability from everyone you meet, even those who never planned on being honest. And that, spirit warrior, is why the gossip starts. When you don't shrink to fit, others scramble to contain you. When you speak truthfully, it confronts the lies others have built their identity around. That confrontation, it hurts their ego, because deep down, they know you see through them. Your light makes their shadows tremble. It's not your fault. Truth is disruptive by nature. In psychological terms, your presence triggers what's known as cognitive dissonance. That's the mental discomfort someone feels when they are confronted with truths that challenge their beliefs, behaviors, or self-image. You are a walking contradiction to their false narrative. While they wear masks, you walk in truth. And that mismatch makes them uncomfortable. So instead of dealing with their own issues, they try to make you the problem. But here's where your power multiplies. You don't flinch. You don't water yourself down. You know the storm is coming when truth walks in, and you are the storm. Your discernment doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you protected. You're not meant to fit in. You're meant to call things out in the spirit, not always with words, but with a frequency that can't be faked. So yes, spirit warrior, you know when love isn't love. You know when support has strings attached. You know when they say, "I'm happy for you," but their spirit is full of envy, and still you move in truth. You love anyway, but wisely. You smile anyway, but with eyes wide open. You keep showing up with the boldness of someone who's been handpicked by God to see what others ignore. And that's why you're dangerous to every lie that ever tried to disguise itself as love. Because when you walk in, truth walks in with you, and every false thing in the room starts shaking. Point 4. You don't flex, you flood. Under the Spirit Warrior's banner, where silence is power and presence is prophecy, let's get real for a moment. You don't need to brag. You don't need to spell out your IQ or parade your credentials like you're on some cosmic resume runway. Because when you walk into a room, you don't just enter, you shift the atmosphere. Without saying a word, you command attention not through noise, but through presence, through purpose, through the kind of quiet confidence that leaves a room full of loud mouths stunned into silence. And believe it or not, that is more intimidating than any flex or boast could ever be. You see, Spirit Warrior, we live in a world where many people mistake volume for value, where the loudest ones in the room are often just the most desperate for validation. They equate shouting with strength and attention with power. But here you are, unbothered, grounded, poised. While they scramble to be seen, you're already known without trying. While they chase claps, you move with impact. And that makes people uncomfortable. Psychologists call this status incongruence. It's when someone's internal sense of self doesn't match the presence of someone who doesn't play by the usual social rules. People are conditioned to expect that power looks a certain way, loud, aggressive, boastful. But when you come in calm, wise, centered, and yet somehow still magnetic, it forces them to reassess what power really means. Your silence, your stillness, challenges the very system they've built their self-worth upon. They expect dominance to be performative, but yours is subtle, deep, and spiritual. You don't shout, you radiate. And here's the part they can't handle. Your intelligence threatens their illusion. Not because you correct them or try to prove a point or expose them with facts and figures. No, it's because your very being is proof that they were wrong about you. Maybe they underestimated you. Maybe they tried to box you in. Maybe they whispered that you'd never make it because you didn't play by their rules. But now you're glowing, evolving, operating in a frequency they can't fake. And that's why the gossip creeps in. That's why they talk. When you don't brag about your intelligence, but live it through your decisions, your peace, your spiritual clarity, that's threatening to people who use loudness as a smokescreen for insecurity. Spirit warriors don't seek to impress. They move to impact. They plant seeds, they shift mindsets, and they change the vibe of every space they walk into. And that's done not through performance, but through presence. Think about great leaders, sages, or even mythical warriors across cultures. Many of them were not the loudest, but the wisest. From samurais to monks, their discipline wasn't measured in noise, but in restraint. In modern terms, it's the energy of the quiet chess player in a room full of checkers champions. Everyone else is busy playing for the crowd. You're strategizing for the win. And when people realize that your silence holds more weight than their loudest move, they either fall in awe or crumble in envy. The truth is, your stillness mirrors back their restlessness. Your wisdom exposes their need for performance. Your refusal to compete invalidates the game entirely. And that, Spirit Warrior, is where your power lies. You're not on this planet to prove anything to anybody. You're not in the business of chasing claps or securing approval from the insecure. You're here to walk your path, to live your calling, and to carry your truth quietly, boldly, and without apology. So let them gossip. Let them speculate about the source of your confidence, the mystery of your calm, and the reason why their noise keeps bouncing off your peace. Because while they're busy talking, you're busy walking. In purpose, in poise, and in power. And that, my friend, is the loudest silence they'll ever hear. Point 5. You know when to walk away, and that's power. Have you ever walked into a room and just known the vibe's off? You can't explain it logically, but something in your spirit starts whispering, this isn't it. That's not just intuition, it's discernment. One of the most underrated superpowers spirit warriors carry. Most people will ignore that feeling. They'll stay put, shrink themselves, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and twist into someone unrecognizable just to be accepted. But not you. You feel when someone's energy shifts, when their smile turns hollow, when their spirit speaks something their mouth won't say. And when that moment hits, you don't fight for a seat at a table that feeds your soul crumbs. You bless them and leave. Now let's unpack why that's so rare and so powerful. See, most people are programmed from a young age to chase approval. We're raised on be polite, don't cause trouble, and fit in. And that programming makes it hard for folks to walk away when the energy turns. They stay in draining friendships, fake relationships, and toxic workplaces because somewhere deep down, they were taught that toleration is better than isolation. But not you. You've rewired that code. You've trained your soul to understand that your peace isn't a luxury, it's a right. That's not arrogance, that's emotional intelligence bathed in self-worth. And oh, how it shakes them up. When you remove yourself from people who only clap when you're quiet, they start whispering. They think they're better than us. Who do they think they are? They've changed. Yes, you have. Growth is supposed to look like distance, but don't get it twisted. That judgment they project, it's just admiration dressed in discomfort. Because deep down, they wish they had the guts to do what you just did. You're showing them a blueprint for boundaries, boundaries that don't come with explanations or apologies. Boundaries that say, I choose me even if you don't. Let's make it educational for a second. Psychologically speaking, what you're practicing is known as emotional self-regulation and interpersonal boundary setting. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Henry Cloud, boundaries are a personal property line that marks those things for which we are responsible. And guess what? You're not responsible for staying in places where you're merely tolerated. Your spiritual radar detects misalignment the way a compass finds north. And when do you leave? That's not drama, it's divine redirection. Now here's the entertaining twist. People love to watch you leave until they realize you're not coming back. They'll refresh your stories, peep your glow up, and study your silence like it's scripture. Why? Because your absence speaks louder than their assumptions ever could. Spirit warriors don't do petty exits. You don't storm out, slam doors, or post subliminals. You simply fade like royalty. And the silence you leave behind, that's where the real sermon begins. In fact, your silence preaches a message louder than confrontation. It says, I'm no longer available for what dims my light. It teaches without words. That's why you're called a spirit warrior. You don't fight battles with fists. You shift atmospheres with your presence. Your exit is a portal. Your departure makes room for truth to sit where pretense once lived. And let's be real, it takes insane strength to leave people you once prayed for. It takes maturity to walk away without bitterness. It takes spiritual depth to understand that some goodbyes are actually divine upgrades in disguise. But you do it over and over again. Because you've learned that every time you honor your intuition, your life levels up. So next time someone calls you too much, take it as confirmation. Too much truth, too much light, too much integrity for their comfort zone. Let them gossip. Let them misunderstand. Just keep moving. Spirit warriors aren't here to be understood by the crowd. They're here to obey the call, and sometimes that call tells you to leave quietly, say, with your crown still on. Point 6. You learn from shadows and never get lost in them. You've been through the fire, spirit warrior, and not just once. You've walked through it like it was your birthright, forged not in comfort, but in crucibles. Real spiritual strength doesn't come from meditating in silence with incense floating in the air, though that helps. It comes from being dragged through life's messiest lessons and still choosing to stand tall, wiser than before. You didn't just experience trials, you transcended them, and that makes you rare, that makes you real, because fire in the spiritual sense is a purifier. It burns away the ego, illusions, expectations, and false attachments. In many ancient traditions like the Native American sweat lodge ceremonies or the biblical refiner's fire, fire is not an end, it's a beginning. It's the soul's reintroduction to its own power. Let's be honest, spiritual growth is brutal. People think it's all love and light until it rips them wide open and makes them face their shadow. But you, spirit warrior, you didn't flinch. You held eye contact with your pain. You asked it questions. You dug into your past, your patterns, and the lies you were told and started rewriting your own script. That's spiritual intelligence. Psychologist Howard Gardner defined multiple types of intelligence, but spiritual intelligence, that's not always taught in schools. It's earned through spiritual battle scars. It's what makes you ask, why is this happening for me? Instead of, why is this happening to me? And in that tiny shift of perception, a warrior is born. You were lied to, laughed at, and left out. And not because you were weak, but because people sensed your potential before you even knew you had it. You were the threat before you became the warrior. Why? Because your light exposes things in others they don't want to deal with. When you walk into a room with healed energy, it acts like a spotlight, and not everyone wants to be seen. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You didn't just make it conscious, you dissected it, blessed it, and dared to live differently. That's what makes you dangerous in the most divine way. The people gossiping now, they're loud because they're unsettled. And what unsettles them is how your existence reflects what they've been avoiding. Spirit warriors aren't aggressive, they're assertive. Your peace, it's a quiet power. Your boundaries, that's your sword. Your silence, that's your shield. People don't always understand it, so they fill the gaps with gossip, with envy, with projections. But none of that matters. What matters is that you know who you are now. You're not reacting. You're responding. You're not proving. You're embodying. And that, spirit warrior, is the most powerful kind of revenge. Living in your truth, thriving in your calling, and radiating a frequency so elevated that it triggers healing or insecurity in everyone you meet. Keep rising. The fire made you luminous. Point 7, you speak truth even when your voice shakes. Spirit warrior, your voice doesn't just echo, it reverberates through the spiritual and psychological fabric of every room you enter. You don't just speak truth, you slice through deception like a flaming sword. Your words carry weight because they're not rooted in opinion but in divine alignment. That's why people either draw near to you or scatter like shadows at sunrise. You've lost friends, family, and maybe even jobs, not because you were cruel, but because you were clear. Clarity intimidates the dishonest. When you say that's not right, it shakes those who've built entire identities on manipulation, pride, and illusion. Social psychology even backs this up. Truth-tellers trigger cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort that arises when people are confronted with realities that clash with their constructed beliefs. That's why they whisper about you, roll their eyes, or label you too intense. But here's the irony. The louder they talk, the more they reveal their guilt. They're not gossiping because you're wrong. They're gossiping because you're right. And like Jesus, who was slandered, mocked, and crucified for speaking eternal truths, you too will face resistance. But spirit warrior, never dim that holy flame in your mouth. You're not here to fit in. You're here to disrupt darkness with truth. Keep speaking. Chosen one, let them gossip. Let them whisper in rooms you're not in. Let them watch from afar with curious eyes and restless tongues. Because while they're wasting breath discussing your next move, you're already 5 steps ahead. The truth is, greatness often walks quietly until the noise it generates becomes impossible to ignore. And you were never meant to play small. You carry within you a divine blueprint, one that confuses the average mind and threatens the insecure soul. So while they're busy talking about your intelligence, your aura, and your growth, you're busy building your purpose, your peace, and your legacy. Every chosen one goes through seasons of being misunderstood, misjudged, and even mocked. It's part of the calling. The Bible reminds us in Matthew 5:11-12, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." That's not just a warning. It's a badge of honor. Their whispers are just echoes of your impact. Their slander is often a signpost that you're disrupting the atmosphere. You're walking in purpose, not popularity. You're staying spiritually awake in a world that thrives on distraction and illusion. And most importantly, you're protected not just by your wisdom, but by the divine covering that surrounds every soul chosen for a higher calling. What they say can't stop what God has spoken. Destiny is not a debate, it's a decree. And when God decrees something over your life, no amount of gossip, jealousy, or sabotage can cancel it. In fact, the more they talk, the more confirmation you receive that your light is too loud to be ignored. Darkness always reacts when the light gets too bright. You weren't meant to blend in, chosen one. You were born to break molds, to shatter expectations, to awaken the sleeping, and to challenge the status quo. That kind of presence can't be hidden, and that kind of mission can't be silenced. So keep glowing, keep growing, keep moving in silence, and letting your work speak louder than your words. Never dim your brilliance just to make others feel comfortable in their insecurity. Your mind is divine. It thinks on a frequency they haven't even tuned into yet. Your mission is sacred. It's not about ego or fame, but about healing, awakening, and truth. And your power? They're just now catching up to it. You've been operating in a realm that only the spiritually attuned can recognize. Let them talk, let them speculate. That's what spectators do. But you're not a performer. You're a warrior, a spirit on assignment. So whenever you feel weary or tempted to shrink back, watch this again. Remind yourself who you are. A chosen one, a spiritual giant cloaked in human form. Stay awake, because the world is sleeping. Stay strong, because the weak are watching. And most of all, stay chosen, because your role is far too important to abandon now. The whispers may follow you, but so will the wind of God, and that is more than enough.